We move on. New York Jets at Green Bay Packers. We're at Lambeau Field in Green Bay, Wisconsin. It's starting to get a little cooler out there. 49 Fahrenheit, mostly cloudy, 11 miles per hour. And Bobby Saleh taking on his close friend and the brother of his offensive coordinator, Mike LaFleur, taking on Matt LaFleur. This one will also be a lot of fun. Look at these Jets go. Let's start with the line history here. This opened with Green Bay minus 7.5 at minus 106. It's better to go the other way because the Jets opened plus 7.5 minus 106, and now they're plus 7.5 at minus 122. It's moved to 7 at most books. From a total perspective, opened up at Pinnacle at 45, and this got up to 47. Now sitting at 46, but it got all the way up to 47. Let's take a look at the cash flow on this one. We have just over 10,000 tickets in, 60% of the tickets and 67% of the cash on the New York Jets. Then 85% of the tickets and 95% of the cash on the over, but it was deemed too high at 47. All right, Jets come in off that impressive 40-17 win at home over the Dolphins. First 3-2 start since 2017. Their first win against a division rival since 2019. Zach Wilson, 14 of 21 for 210 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions. And he's just changing everything in that locker room. He says the expectation is changing. We are expecting to come in here and win and be shocked when we don't. Breece Hall was incredible. He ran 18 times for 97 yards and a touchdown, caught 2 passes for 100 yards. The defense looked strong all afternoon. They finished with 2 sacks, but 16 quarterback hits. Carl Lawson, John Franklin Myers combined for 12 quarterback hits. Sauce Gardner continued to show why he was the 4th overall pick in this year's draft. It was his first interception, but he also came in on the blitz that knocked Bridgewater out of the game and got the intentional grounding safety. And defensive end Jermaine Johnson was carted off with an ankle injury, and that hurts to lose that rookie. Packers come in off a surprise 27-22 loss in England to the Giants. I thought I was in business. I thought everything that I had planned for that game was coming to fruition. Yeah. I cashed the first half. I said, watch Rodgers put on a show. I really and then it all fell apart. Rodgers, 25 of 39 for 222 yards, 2 touchdowns, no picks. Randall Cobb, 7 for 99. Aaron Jones had 13 carries for 63 yards, caught 2 for 17. But, and this is what I want to really focus on here as we try to figure out our angle in this game, the defense couldn't get stops when they needed them. They allowed the Giants to go 6 for 11 on 3rd down. They finished with 1 sack and 4 quarterback hits. We believed that this was an elite defense in the preseason. Both the Patriots 2 weeks ago and the Giants this past week did whatever they wanted when push came to shove. The Packers are 14th in opponent yards per play. They're 21st in opponent red zone touchdown scoring. They have never lost back-to-back games in the same regular season under LaFleur. They do lose Christian Watson, which shouldn't be too big of a deal. Let's start with this Packers defense. Is this just an average, mediocre defense?
It's below average. It's one of the defenses I've had to downgrade the most. And I'm always willing and ready to downgrade defenses based on my priors, based on where I had them before the beginning of the year, especially on that side of the ball. You know, offense is different. A lot of those upgrades or downgrades are usually based on injuries or somebody new coming into the system and overperforming. But defense, usually it's just really, really hard to predict. Like I said, you can have a bunch of good players, and it just doesn't work out sometimes, a scheme, or sometimes it's just the opponents. And the Packers, yeah, they're a bottom 10 defense right now. They've looked really bad. You can remember, Daniel Jones is bad enough that the team didn't even take his 5th-year option. So the last 2 weeks, they have a guy that the team doesn't believe in, and then a 7th-round rookie. I'm trying to think where Zappy got drafted. It was pretty deep in the draft. Like, is there was that? I'm trying to remember. Was that the game that Hoyer started and then got knocked out?
Yeah, it got concussed.
So it was Hoyer to start and then Zappy. So like the quarterbacks they're facing, that's pretty damning for this defense, obviously. And, you know, it's another week where we're going to see a young runner, a lot younger than Saquon, but Breece Hall looked good. Obviously, some of those passes, he was just wide open, and there was a lot of green. I blame the Dolphins more for some of that, but he's looking good. They have Wilson, Sauce Gardner's been playing. Like it's a Jets team that's definitely overperforming. And it's another one of those too where, hey, the Jets just had a really nice result. We should be selling high on them. But in what world should we be, laying a lot of points with this Green Bay offense that did nothing in the second half, that opted to not take the bye after traveling to London like most teams have done? And this is another team that's done it. 4 teams now have done this. And somebody in the chat asked about that. Minnesota and New Orleans played last week after coming off the London bye, or the London game. Both kind of covered. I guess Minnesota was a push for a lot of people. Some people got a good Bears number. And the Saint, but what can you take away from that Saints Seahawks game? I mean, that was a wild ass clusterfuck of a shootout. It's hard to really. I guess both games had more points than were expected, so I do kind of like this over. I think the Jets can move on this offense, or excuse me, on this defense. And Green Bay has weapons. Like, I don't expect to see what we saw in the second half all that often. If push comes to shove and they're forced to throw the ball and forced to move fast and score to try to keep up with the game, I think more often than not, you'll see them doing so. Like, it just was such an aberration, that second half over there in London. I don't think that's what we're going to see more often than not. And yeah, I do like this over 46. I'm going to bet that. It's a good running scheme. Starting to get into sync with some of the receivers. I don't think Watson is a big loss. And yet the Jets, as much as it should be sell on the Jets now that it's high and Wilson's not that good, they have enough weapons. And somebody Alex point this out, like, they have some decent wide receivers. The Giants have no wide receivers, and they did what they did. The Giants are legitimately probably the worst wide receiving room in the league at the moment until they get some people healthy. So you have the Jets front 7 playing well. We'll see what happens, but Jets are probably live to cover this. I like the over a little more than I like the points. So I lean both ways, Jets and over. I'm going to take some over 46, I think was the best price. I got that at Chris as well.
Yeah, I can get you that at minus 105 at Bovada and Bodog.
There we go.
I like that look. I told myself, and I'm sort of doing it with the 49ers, although the angle's a little different, the first quarter, first half angle that I have with them. But I told myself that I would not buy any team high all year. So if I'm going to follow through with that, it means there's no bet on this football game.
Yeah. And it's a tricky slope too, because it's like, at what point is truly the market topped out on a team? It's not like a team hasn't covered 2 games in a row, 3 games in a row, Falcons 5 games in a row. And sometimes the market is just way too slow to react to a certain team. And I do think they're there with the Jets offense for sure. And that's where I like this over a little more than the points.
I do think that this team believes in themselves, and I want to bet the Jets, but then I would be
I said both New York teams, I don't think either of them has found their quarterback, but they both found their coach. Like, obviously Dable's great, and I do kind of like what Salah's been doing with the kind of not the best of rosters.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I have to not bet it. I just have to stick to this rule.
That's kind of where I'm at too, is where I prefer the over to the +7. If you get a 7.5, boy, that's awful tempting.
I'm gonna have to stay off. It's and I hear you, Birdie, and I respect you guys for backing the Jets. I just have to stick to this rule. I have to. If I start slipping up now, when will it stop? It won't stop. Okay, Andy has moved on the over 46. I find this a very interesting game that I'm going to keep working on. Let's move on.